Hello. I have to consider myself a lucky man because I'm fortunate and privileged enough to have two workshops. One's just a little garden shed workshop back home in the British Isles, and the other is at my place here in France. And I'm going to show you my France workshop now in this video. So here we are. This is the surrounding countryside. It's a beautiful warm sunny day in late October. Fantastic, and we're not very far south in France here either, but the weather is absolutely gorgeous. And here's the general environment. The workshop is across the road, this tiny little road that ends up in this little hamlet where the house is. It's a little road that hardly any traffic ever comes on, tiny little country road, and the workshop's across the road from my house. And we're just walking towards the door now. So, we'll open up and go inside. And I'll show you what's going on in here. Here's a general view first of all. I don't get to use this workshop anything like as much as I would like to. But, you know, it's coming, and I'll try and keep it tidy and usable. So I'm quite pleased to come back to it in its present state after several months this time actually away. So I'll show you what we've got here. There's the view out of the door. It's pretty nice. It heads down to a gentle valley. Now, first of all, here we just have a kind of shelf full of general bits and pieces. This is a length of ductile iron pipe, 8-inch diameter internally, and I'm going to use that to make a pier or column to support my astronomical telescopes, and that will be mounted on a permanent base. Well, the base will be permanent, the pier will be removable. Somewhere over there, that's where the pier will be. So that's a project probably for next year now. Next up, we have this Centec 2A vertical and horizontal milling machine. Again, I haven't used this much. I'm thinking maybe I'll take this back to the UK with me. I'm not sure. But it's a British machine made in the 1960s. Hemel Hempstead in Hertfordshire, where it was made. Not far from where my father grew up, despite my Scottish accent. He was from the south of England. So this beautiful old Centec 2A in really nice condition is going to, well, maybe come back with me. I don't know, we shall see. But there's the horizontal. It's a bit dark here at this point, but you can see the horizontal arm there, and here it's fitted with the vertical head. It's got this vertical head in it, which is quite hard to come by nowadays, this vertical head. Okay, moving on round. Here are my three anvils on their stumps. These are really nice. They're pretty old. They're French, come from Ronchon in the east of France, which is, you may recognise the name. There's a famous modernist church there by Le Corbusier. But these anvils come from there, and I think they're pretty old. I'd give it a couple of 100 years, I guess. That one has a nice ring to it. And this one is a dainty little spike anvil. Very nice. Continuing on, we have this beastie. It's a American horizontal mill, probably 100 years or so old. It's on a really nice cast iron stand as well. Lovely machine. Look at these brass hand wheels. You know, no dials on these. Maybe there were at one time, but there aren't now. You just use it either with measuring instruments or you just eyeball it. But depends what you want to do. But it's a very solid, very heavy machine. Not a huge mill, but it's a really heavy piece of industrial kit. And I use this for quite a few jobs, and it works great. You can see that it would have had flat belt pulleys on it at one time, but someone's converted it to V-belt pulleys with this setup here and that bright orange counter shaft, which kind of stands out like a sore thumb, but never mind. Next round, we have a relatively recent acquisition, which is a Myford ML7 lathe on its own stand. Lovely Dewhurst switch there and everything, very retro, cool control panel there with all the thread pitches and speeds and so on it. I had to take this apart a little bit to transport it, and really I have done nothing with it so far, but this is a future restoration project. Machine tool restoration is one of my passions, but I'm not very good at it really. I'm not much of an engineer, but you know, we learn, I guess. But well, you know, I've got too many machines stacked up waiting to be given a new lease of life, unfortunately. But this one will be a nice one when it's done. It's got a nice don't know quite what you call it, a capstan tailstock. That's a nice touch, I think. Here's just a little tool caddy. Nothing special about that. I need to get my hand tools much better organised. Here's a bit of dead space. Haha, dead space that I can use for something. With a little paraffin heater in it. Which is all the heating I've got in here, but I'm not here much during the winter time. Then in this corner there's nothing much. There's a lot of things here that can be rejigged to make a bit more room. And then here we've got another tool shelf. I'm going to do something about these shelves. They're not going to stay like this forever. In fact, I might change something around quite soon, in which case I'll maybe do a PS to this video. There's a nice old counter shaft that I bought with one of the machines. It's a beautiful thing. I'd like to think that I'm going to use it sometime. Quite for what, I don't know. But I quite like the idea that you know, I've got some of these old bits and pieces. I don't know what I'm going to use them for, but I really would like to use them for something. Moving around, here's a kiln. It's a glass kiln. I've used to do stained glass work in Scotland, and to be honest, I haven't done any for years. But this kiln, I'm pretty sure, will still work. It wouldn't be impossible that I would use it for stained glass again. This is for fusing glass and painting glass. Might do some stained glass work in the future. I don't know, but I'm sure the kiln could be used for other things, and I'm guessing it might even melt aluminium, but I think that might be quite an expensive way of melting aluminium. We shall see. And this here table is a cabinet, which I've gone to some lengths to make it look fancy. Another project which I've started and now have to try my best to finish at some point. But this is going to be a double machine driven by an overhead drive shaft and hopefully a three-phase motor. And it's made of, comprises of two mills. The first one here is, well, the top part, the business end, if you like, of an old George Taylor milling machine, British. There's some important bits missing from that though, including the bevel gear that raises and lowers the table, and one of the gib strips. Is it gib strip or jib strip? I can never be quite sure about that. But so there's a bit of engineering work to be done there if I'm going to restore it to anything like its former glory, but that ain't going to happen anyway because it doesn't have the old, you know, flat belt drive system on it anymore. So it's going to be a boss job, but it's a monumental chunk of cast iron and it's got to be used for something. Beside it is this really unique and interesting machine, which is an old Swiss clockmakers or watchmakers milling machine, I guess clockmakers. And it's got 7 spindles, and all of these spindles go in and out and can be adjusted for their position along the bed as well. And what would happen, of course, is you have a different cutter on each spindle, and then you'd bring the workpiece along on the table like this, and each cutter would perform its own operation. So you've got multiple operations in one pass. Very interesting. But the only way I can see to run this would be with a serpentine belt, and I couldn't figure that out myself, but that was a tip that someone gave me on a forum, which was very helpful. So that will be one heck of a project. And here's this nice old oak pillar that was part of an old extension to the house, which already sanded, planed, waxed and everything to use as one of the pillars that will support the drive system for this contraption. So how many years am I going to live to do all these things? The windows, well, they're boarded up because I'm away quite a lot, and it's probably better, even though it's a very peaceful area. I don't really want people peering in and getting ideas. In the drawers here, lots of milling cutters and so on and so forth. Little vise there, etc. And underneath we have, I don't know if you can see very well, decent sized milling vise, parts for that George Taylor mill, etc. Next we have my 626 milling machine. It's a fairly commonly available machine. It's Chinese, and it's the biggest mill that I've got. It's not a huge milling machine as far as these things go, but it's got a fair old capacity on it for my purposes, and it seems to be quite good, you know. I much prefer the old British, American and European machines, but you know, you can't have everything. But this isn't bad. I think it's not bad. I haven't used it very much. There's my crane for lifting things up and down. This is a Myford ML10 lathe. Again, something that I haven't used. It's on its own cabinet that its previous owner built. There's all kinds of bits and pieces underneath there. Faceplate, a fixed steady that was somebody's home shop product. A radius cutter which came from a Chinese mini lathe that I owned, and so on. This was owned by one owner, and he was a very careful engineer, and he didn't use it very much apparently, so it's in pretty good nick, this machine. What he did do is put on some digital readout scales, which will be very handy once I get a display for it rigged up. This could be my kind of precision lathe, I guess. Here we have this cabinet that's full of this, that and the next thing. I won't open all of the drawers. It's just got stuff like that in it, you know, collets, cutters, trucks and so on. Kind of nice. And here we have some very nice milling cutters for the horizontal mill. Really cool cutters like this, which have hardly been used, I think. Some of them haven't been used at all. These are nice radius cutters and everything. Beautiful. And in this box here there are more. Of these, including some like this, which are seriously chunky milling cutters, very sharp. You don't want to be messing around with these things. The heavy, solid piece of kit. And in there as well, somewhere, there are some slab cutting mills, which are amazing and haven't been used. I got them with the horizontal milling machine, most of them, and the guy who sold me it actually reckons that they might be too heavy, these cutters, for a relatively small mill. But we can only find out by trying it. Take light cuts, I guess. It's another counter shaft with a lovely cast iron pulley on it. Flat belt pulley, of course. Somebody gave me that, threw it in along with a Centec 2 milling machine that I bought off him and restored. Bits and pieces, a couple of old electric motors which will be used for something. This is nice. It's an indexing head with an interesting kind of, instead of indexing plates or a ring, it's got these where the detent goes in laterally into the holes, and there's a little number stamp that tells you how many holes there are on each thingy. Put a nice big chuck on it, and there's a tailstock for it. It's a British machine. I bought it at a Model Engineering trade fair. This is one of my little pride and joy. You'll see this in another one of my videos. It's a Burke horizontal milling machine, restored by myself with great effort. It's sat here ever since, unused, but it's still in pretty nice nick. It only needs as a wipe over, and it can be hooked up to a counter shaft and one of these motors relatively easily. And I can see that as just being installed on my bench, maybe for kind of specialised little jobs. On the other hand, I may decide to sell it at some point. I don't know. We shall see. And finally, that's us back round to the door again. So finally, let's have a look at my workbench and the bits in the centre of the shop. Just looking along, well, there's my not very special vise, but it's nicely bolted to this fairly solid and substantial workbench. There's not very special bench grinder, ditto. And here's a project that I'm currently working on, which is an Ajax milling machine. Now these were originally horizontal mills, but when I bought it, it was somebody else had converted it into a vertical mill, and put a windscreen wiper motor X-axis powered feed on it as well. It's quite a solid little bit of kit, and I think it's in quite good nick. So that's a restoration project for here, but again, these things take a long time because I'm not here as often as I'd like to be, and there are too many things to do in this relatively short life. But I suppose it's better than being bored. I like this machine. It's kind of ugly, solid, but you know, it's kind of nice as well. There's the table for it, upside down, all ready to be cleaned up and all the rest of it. There's the powered drive setup. Somebody knew what they were doing when they made this. And there is the vertical head that they've made for it as well. So it's quite an ugly duckling when it's all together, but I think it's going to have its own beauty, and I might put it on this this stand, which is a huge stand for a Centec 2A, a Centec milling machine. I bought the stand in its own right so that I could put another mill on it. There's the base for that machine. Unfortunately, I had an accident with the engine crane, I'm ashamed to say. Carelessness, inattention, and thinking I could get away with things that I shouldn't have tried. So it came back to haunt me in the form of a broken base. Welding cast iron is beyond my skills, but there's a blacksmith up the road here, and I might have a chat with him about that to see if he can weld it. But I'll only do that if the price is right, because I might just have to dispense with it and use something else. And then look at this. This big, huge aluminium cooking pot. Enormous. You could cook for I don't know, a whole troop of Boy Scouts in this thing. But I bought it for the purpose of soaking parts in kerosene prior to cleaning up. So here's all pieces from that Ajax mill. Look at that. I'm going to have fun trying to sort that lot out and even remember what the hell goes where. And you can see there, just there, that it has, instead of the conventional kind of ball handles or hand wheels, it's got little cranking handles, but they're really nicely made. They've got knurled ends on them and everything like that. You can't really see that properly here, but you know, these wee details are quite nice in the machine. Having said that, this is one machine. I need to properly assess the table and you know, make sure that there's no undue wear, but it is a machine that I'm considering maybe having a go at converting to CNC, in which case the windscreen wiper motor drive will go, and so will the cranking handles, and be replaced with stepper motors and so on. What else? Not a lot, I don't think. Oh yeah, there is something. Up here, there is a wonderful stack of wood. At that end, it's oak. These are all oak bars that came from the old extension that I took down. Some of these will be reused in the house. Some of them will be used for projects here. I've taken my wood turning lathe back to UK, but you know, I can move things back and forward to some degree. And this, you can see the square ends of here and the round logs, this is walnut. I had a walnut tree behind the house. Now, I would never have even dreamed of tearing down a walnut tree. It seems like a barbaric thing to do, but unfortunately it was too near the house and it was going to undermine the house, damage the foundations of the house with its roots. And a tree surgeon who is known here to be very tree sensitive and who will refuse to cut down trees that don't need to be cut down, I believe, this guy, Antoine, he took one look at it and he said, it's too near the house, it's got to come down. So that's what's happened. So now I've got all these lovely bits of quite substantial, big bits of walnut that are cut to the right length. These ones are cut to the right length from a wood turning lathe, and these are kind of leftovers. Quite a lot of them are split. Despite me having done my best with sealing the ends and all the rest of it, sometimes I believe wood will just do that no matter what you try to do. But my aim is to not waste even a toothpick's worth of this walnut because it's got a special connotation for me. And all the wood's supported on these big oak beams that go across from one of the main trusses to the other, which are also oak. So these oak beams will also be able to be used at some point as well once all the wood's down off them, but that's going to be maybe about 300 years from now, something like that. Okay, I'll give you an update when I've made a few changes. Thanks for watching. See ya.